can you talk about how these conflicts are going to really impact the American people here, the U.S.? Like, what is an Israeli defeat? I mean, I know I've kind of asked this question before, but I think.
Well, again, it's just our ties to Israel are much deeper and kind of are
Almost
all
religious.
encompassing. Yeah, I mean, it's on many different levels. It's religious, social, political. It's very extensive, and it goes way back. So I think a defeat for Israel to suffer a real obvious defeat, especially with U.S. involvement, it's going to have repercussions, serious repercussions within this country. And I can't really even foresee it because the whole thing is so. I find the whole phenomena of Zionism, both Jewish Zionism and Christian Zionism, and the subservience of the U.S. government to Israeli interests is such a bizarre phenomenon without really any precedent in history. It's so irrational to begin with, and but it's also so real. It's so it's so intense. When it suffers a really serious blow, I don't know what the reaction is going to be, but it's going to be substantial. I think within this country, it's not just going to be like affect our foreign policy. It's not like just some adjustments will be made in the State Department and in the Department of Defense. No, this is something that's going to resonate or echo throughout society. But I'm not going to even pretend to tell you how it's going to. It may lead to some sort of real polarization, like over the whole issue of Israel, and actually our relationship to the Jews in general, and it could lead to a real clash between philo-Semitic and anti-Semitic forces within this country. But that's just a wild guess. Because it's such a strange phenomenon. I don't think you can really apply the normal rules of logic to it because it really isn't very logical.
But you think it could really tear this country apart?
It could. I think it really could. I think it's something that can, because it is part of the fabric of the American identity, strangely enough. It shouldn't be, but it's just for a lot of people, part of being an American is also being committed to Israel. That's weird. It's so very strange, but we know it's true. Here we live in the South, and you can see it. And then, but it's not just the South. It's in New York City. New York City Jews. It's something that you find in American society in different regions and in different levels and of government. And
it's strange. It's not something I really ever noticed or thought about when I was a kid or growing up, but now that I've become aware of the situation, it's true. I see it. Just the other day, I saw there's a car and it had this sticker with the Israeli flag and the American flag crossed, and I saw a truck with an American eagle, and it was like a shirt, and it was like torn open, and behind it was the Israeli flag and with the American eagle. I'm like, what is this? This is so strange. Why?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's emblematic of what I'm saying right there. It's for real though. And then for you talk about Ukraine, it's the commitment is really, you obviously find individuals, like this like this nut that attempted assassination of the golf course, right? Mm-hmm. That people were very passionate about Ukraine, but they're the exception to the rule. It's just there's not anything analogous to what you see on the Israeli side. The support for Israel and Zionism is real, and it's widespread. The support for Ukraine exists, but it's actually quite minimal outside of the political establishment. Outside of the State Department, and the Defense Department, but mainly the State Department. So a defeat in Ukraine would certainly send shockwaves, but it would be shockwaves really within the political establishment and through governments around the world, who would see this, and it would have real consequences, no question about it. But it's not going to affect the American psyche the way that a defeat in Israel could.
Yeah, I think the end of Israel could spell the end of America. It will spell the end of America as we know it.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean obviously America is going to be around, but I mean it will be a different
Yeah, it will be a different America.
It needs to end. We need to get rid of this parasitic relationship that we have with Israel.
It's a very, very unhealthy relationship. That's it hasn't done us any good.
Right.
In the end, it hasn't done Israel well. If a long time ago we had made it clear to them, hey, you're going to have to make peace with your neighbors. If you get in a war, you're on your own. That would have changed everything. That would have, Netanyahu might not be prime minister today. Mm-hmm. It would be the pro-peace forces and whatever would have a leg up. They would be. It's just that it's similar again to what happened in Ukraine. It's just that the maximalist militaristic forces are empowered by this U.S. relationship because they can go and tell their people that we have the U.S. at our backs. Right. But if they can't tell them that, people look and say, like, what are you doing? You're crazy. You're picking a war, with Russia. What? You're going to pick a war with the whole Middle East. We got to work something out, man. It's.
I think it's interesting that, here a phenomenon that's in the Western world is that there's a lot of guilt for past sins. There's a lot of self-flagellation, and there's ideas of, paying compensation to past crimes. We should do, that whole idea of, what's it called again? I'm losing the term when to pay black people for
reparations.
Right. Yeah. The idea of like paying reparations and these things gain prominence, but within Israeli society, there's no guilt at all, and it's pretty recent. It's ongoing. What they did to the Palestinians, kicked them all out, push them all out, but there's no sense of that guilt, like, oh, we're sorry that we've done this, and maybe now we should atone for our sins and we can get along, and the crimes of our fathers, there's no semblance of that at all. But these the people that live in Israel they're Europeans, they're Americans, they're Canadians, and these countries all have this sense of guilt and this idea that we need to pay reparations and atone for the sins, but you don't get that at all in Israel. Why is that? Why is there no that feeling of like we did something wrong to the people that lived here? We always have that here in the United States about the indigenous people that lived here in America and the European countries, their colonies. But
well, I would. I would describe it. Maybe I'll get myself in trouble if I start going down that road. But,
okay. We don't want to get banned from YouTube.
Well, we'll just say it's for real. I mean, there's, it's clear that Jewish Israelis, actually don't, they consider themselves as a very distinct ethnicity. It's sort of like we have this tendency to think like, oh, they're just sort of one of us, part of our, but there is, I think they have a very distinct sense of identity that has, that differs markedly, from the general white sense of identity. And, one of the ways that it differs markedly is it doesn't have this sense of guilt. It's actually openly supremacist, so much of it now. Before maybe it was covertly supremacist, but now it's openly supremacist. You get people talking like that all the time in Israel. And it's just, you may not know about it if you're watching mainstream media, but you're watching any other sort of, you're out there on social media, you just hear these comments all the time that you could only, for coming from not U.S., but Israeli government officials, and you can only describe it as supremacist.
I guess, it makes sense. I just kind of was thinking that, they come from these cultures and societies in Europe and the United States but they have their own unique identity that's within. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I remember being I think I've mentioned this at least once before, but, when I went to Israel and Palestine in 2011, I grew up in Berkeley and surrounded by a lot of mostly secular Jews. Some of my two very best friends were actually secular Jews, one half Jewish, one fully Jewish. And, I always associated these people with a real zealous commitment to diversity. And to, things like high levels of immigration, and I assumed that when I got to Israel, that I would find a kind of country full of these sort of people, That's not what I found. I mean, we've met a few of those people, but they were few and far between. You had to get on a bus and travel 50 miles to find one of them. They were a tiny minority within Israel. And then they understood that, wait a second, it's like this commitment to multiculturalism and diversity was for white people, but it wasn't for Jewish people. And that's something that the Jews themselves understood. I mean, that's, again, there are honorable exceptions, and we met those people. But by and large, that's something that white people in the U.S. and Europe, they have to do, but this is not something that's required of us. We are a separate, that's not part of the treatment that we receive. We can be, frankly, openly, we can be supremacist, because we're not being supremacists as white people. We're being supremacists as Jews, and there's sort of a separate standard there. I mean, this is, maybe getting into dangerous territory, but I think it's just true. That's what I've observed.
It's such a fascinating, almost fantastical situation that we have here. It's so crazy that this relationship that Israel has with the United States and how they control the United States, and that our country might really get destroyed, break apart from what Israel is doing, and we just can't say no to it. And I can't wrap my head around it. It's just, every time we talk about it, I'm just like,
right.
Really, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, it's very hard to, but it's just for real. I mean, you just think about it again. It wasn't too long ago that Netanyahu was at our Congress, and what was it in July?
Standing ovations.
Yeah, right.
And one of them lasted for more than a minute. Now,
right. I finally had to even tell him to stop clapping, because he couldn't give it. There's no other foreign leader that gets. So it's not like we're exaggerating anything at all. You can't exaggerate it. That's what's happening in this country.
It's really incredible.
Right.
It's really incredible how this, and I just how so many people. How did it happen that so many people in America, they just grew up, they were raised to say that, America and Israel were two peas in a pod. We have to be, because it's so strong. I encounter it a lot here, and it makes it difficult to have conversations with people around. I usually don't, because I don't know where. I know a lot of people where they stand on this issue does not jive with my view of the situation.
Yeah, right.
But it's just how I'm like, you guys are Christians. Well,
right.
Why? What?
Right.
These people believe that they spit on Christians, and they believe that Christ is burning in excrement in hell for, why do you have such a love for them? I mean, you should love your neighbor regardless. I don't have any hatred towards anybody unless they've done something personal to me, so, but why do you have this undying commitment and this idea that Muslims are the problem?
We've had our earlier episode on Christian Zionism, which has its own unique history. And I think it's important to understand it's a history that's actually separate from Jewish Zionism. It's not like, I kind of assumed it was like, and I think there's some truth to this, that it's, influential Jewish Zionists kind of misleading gullible Christians and taking them down this path. And there may be some of that. But if you look at the history of Christian Zionism, it's something that arose within the Protestant churches in this country and in the UK, and grew kind of organically within these churches. And it's a very strange phenomenon, but it's very real with very real consequences. So you get these people, but then also, you get equally strong statements from people that have nothing to do with Christian Zionism that are, I was thinking Nancy Pelosi said, like, they've even like the whole Capitol burns to the ground. One thing that will remain is our devotion to the state of Israel, or Joe Biden saying that there's just no daylight between us and Israel. I won't let there be any. It's just the same level of fanaticism. But it's there. It's kind of interwoven in our society and our political system.
Well, it's going to destroy our system. I mean, I firmly believe it, because Israel...
It's already done a great deal of damage. And I think you're right.
And this war that's kicking off, people just, like we said, asked the question in the beginning, what's different about this war to previous Israeli wars? This one, I think Israel will have a devastating defeat. And I think it's going to tear America apart. What you've told me, how we've explained it, I think this is going to just really rip the fabric of the U.S. And it needs to. I mean, maybe that's the only way you can. I mean, if Zionism is infiltrated every level of our society, and it's when it dies, you know that it's going to have huge repercussions throughout every level of society here in the United States. And yeah, I can't. We don't know what exactly is going to happen, but it has to happen. It will happen. It is happening, and let's just pray that it doesn't end with millions and millions of dead people. Because that's a possibility. Okay, well, Dad, we'll end on that happy note then.
Okay.